Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Trammell. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show. OU football finished spring practice last Saturday, and one of the most anticipated Sooner seasons ever beckons. OU is SEC bound and launches that historic season in about 4 months. Are the Sooners ready? OU football is not at the nationally elite level it was a few seasons ago, and now comes a brutal SEC schedule. We'll talk about some of the OU personnel today.
But first, we want to say thanks to these sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, Two Fellas Movers, the Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And we want to ask you to subscribe to our show. It really does help us to help you. So hit that subscribe button. It's a small thing, but it's big for us. Well, Barry, you're right. Spring football is behind the Sooners. The spring game has come and gone. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But at the top of the good list, I got to think Dion Burks is 1, 2, and 3. That guy was electric. The transfer from Purdue, receiver, playing in the slot. Seemed like the Sooners may have found themselves a transfer portal star.
It looks like that. 5 catches. I think it was 174 yards in the first half alone. 2 home run touchdowns. We heard good things about him coming from Purdue, but he certainly showed that on Saturday, coming out of the slot, getting deep on a couple of plays, making some plays on the inside. He looks like the total package. The only downside to Dion Burks is that he plays receiver. That was a pretty good position, probably the best position group on the offense, at least. But you take help wherever you can get it, and he looks like a player. Drake Stoops ended up being Dylan Gabriel's go-to receiver, all Big 12, on a team with a lot of interesting deep threats on the outside for the 23 Sooners. Nick Anderson, Andrell Anthony before he got hurt, Jaden Gibson, Jalil Farouk, a variety of guys. Drake Stoops became the star, became all Big 12, became the go-to guy, and it was a big loss. But Dion Burks looks like he's ready to step in and be at least a major contributor, if not a star.
Yeah, we don't yet know if he's going to be that go-to guy when, the pocket breaks down, when Jackson Arnold has to scramble. Is he going to find space on the field and be available to Jackson Arnold? We don't know that yet. What Drake Stoops did is no small thing, being that safety blanket, being that safety valve, whatever you want to call him. That was big, and that's unique. You don't find that in every receiver. But also, Barry, you don't find guys that are home run threats like it looks like Dion Burks is. And the Sooners, frankly, haven't had one for a while. I mean, they do have some good outside receivers, some guys that showed themselves, capable of big moments, but not like a Hollywood Brown, not like a CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if I'm ready to say Dion Burks is at that level yet. We've only seen him in a spring game, but maybe if he could be, that could be a big difference maker that we have not seen the Sooners have in quite a few seasons.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it in last week's show that coming out of the slot with big play potential in terms of the home run ball that's not a Sooner staple. It's been a while since the Sooners have used that kind of player. So they've been, on the outside guys going deep is where they've been getting it, and still can. Nick Anderson, Nick with no K, as you always have to edit me and remind me. But he's clearly a big play threat. But coming out of the slot, that's a new element. Maybe that's a way that Seth Luttrell can get this offense to a new level. But yeah, wonderful transfer portal addition. This is the kind of portal addition. If you're going to go to the portal, and you have to go to the portal, everybody goes to the portal. This is the ideal. A guy that can come in and make a major impact right away.
Yeah, and a guy that I would assume in the SEC is the kind of speed and breakaway threat that you want. You want to be able to stretch the field even if you're not throwing to him every time. So having a guy like that, I think, could come in real handy. Now, the question becomes, Barry, and again, I'll say this about the receivers. You mentioned Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk. A lot of those guys were standing on the sideline on Saturday. So we don't know what this entire receiver core is going to look like once they're all on the field. Obviously, you can't play all of them, but they've got a lot of guys that are intriguing talents. We've seen some of them already. What is that going to look like? We don't know yet. But a big question is Jackson Arnold going to have the time to get the ball in the hands of these guys? The lines on both sides of the ball remain questionable through the spring game. OU going to the portal hard this spring as the portal window opens post-spring football. I got a commitment from Louisville defensive lineman Jermaine Lowell and SMU center Branson Hickman, although 24/7, not officially official with Hickman, but everywhere else says he's going to be a Sooner. So obviously they feel like they still need to fortify that, but how much more do the Sooners need? What's the pressing needs on those lines right now?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the OU offensive line clearly is far below its standard, right? I mean, in the last 10 years, 8 years, 12 years, maybe we can go all the way back 20 years. I don't know. But that's really not been a concern, especially since Bill Bedenbaugh's been here and Bob Stoops hired Bedenbaugh, I don't know, 2010, 2011. I forgot what year it was. And he's just produced wonderful offensive line after wonderful offensive line. And last year there was a little bit less so. And this year it looks like some patchwork going on. And it's a little dangerous going into the SEC. You'd much prefer those lines with Orlando Brown and Creed Humphrey and that level of player. And now I'm not sure they've got an NFL prospect on that offensive line. So remade the line in the portal. A lot of guys in there. You know, Garen Hatchett from Washington, Michael Tarquin from USC, those guys, and the kid from North Texas. Jacko, you take it over. Fadici.
Wee woo.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But anyway, you know, can these guys play? Maybe. We don't know. You know, it's just so. Branson Hickman, I think, is a good addition. He did a good job at SMU. You know, I thought it was interesting after the game Saturday. Brent Venables took time to personally promote Josh Bates, the redshirt freshman who was playing center. You know, Troy Everett was thought to potentially be the center, one of the few veterans on the offensive line. He's got hurt. Don't know what his status is going to be in the fall. So Josh Bates was the guy, but Venables, praises him pretty clearly to me. Praised him in part because here comes Branson Hickman, and to take that center job. And you know, you don't want Josh Bates hitting the portal, but that's the cost of doing business these days is the threat of people leaving. So it's not an established offensive line, and that's not good for the 24 Sooners.
Yeah, and we saw in the spring game, not great pass protection. I think they counted 8 sacks. Which I guess if you like the defensive line, I mean, that's a good sign because I think all of those sacks came from defensive linemen. So there's sort of a give and take when it comes to the spring game, but not great in pass protection. Did not seem to be giving Jackson Arnold the time you would want. And, clearly it's going to be a lot of SEC defensive linemen coming at him. So, that's not a good sign. But on the flip side, the run game blocking didn't seem that bad. You saw some good numbers by some of those running backs and didn't even really use Gavin Sawchuk a ton. I think he only had 5 carries in the spring game. So sort of some positives and negatives when it comes to, the offensive line. Can they be a good run blocking team? Potentially. Could they be a better pass blocking team by the fall? You would hope so. But on the flip side, Barry, that does say, what about the defensive line? Because it looked like they were able to get some pressure, run blocking, maybe or run defense, just that, stopping the running backs. Maybe that's a concern, but played a lot of guys on the defensive line. So it felt like maybe the defensive line's a little bit further ahead than the offensive line at this point, just because there is such a rebuild, it feels like, going on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I feel a little better about the D-line. They got some, there were some running holes on some of the zone reads, but that's not all on the D-line. So a lot of that's linebacking and whatnot. And the other thing to remember is this, and if you're going to run that 3-man front, which they do quite a bit, you only need 3 guys up there, and you only need 6 in the rotation. The offensive line, you need 5 starters, and you like to have a couple more going in and out for depth and injuries and stuff. So I think there's more holes on the offensive line. The D line, Dejon Terry in the middle, he's about the only experience they have. That's why the kid from Louisville, Jermaine Lowell, coming in. Maybe he can help. I feel better on the outside with they got quite a bit. Ethan Downs looked really good. R. Mason Thomas, P.J. Adebaro made some plays, and I think they got more players on the defensive line on the exterior on the wings. The middle is a concern, and I think that's where the new guy coming in potentially helps. You don't know. He's clearly a player. He's played at Arizona State, now Louisville, now the Sooners, but clearly a good prospect. But a guy who's made a lot of plays, played a lot of football. So can he help? Quite possibly, and they need help in that defensive interior.
Well, it's interesting that the young guys coming in, the 5 stars, David Stone obviously talked a lot about, Jaden Jackson talked a lot about. Both of them had their moments on Saturday, but I have to admit, I was on Thunder duty on Saturday, so I watched the spring game, but I sort of had one eye on it. You had 2 eyes on it. Those young guys on the defensive line, Barry, did you feel like, can they help when the season actually rolls around? Or is this a case where lots of hype, but it's going to be the SEC, and maybe that's a high bar for such young guys to handle? That was such a talking point, those young defensive linemen. Can they help the Sooners come the fall?
Well, clearly they're going to help. I mean, they're going to play, and they wouldn't be playing. Yeah. They're not playing because you're trying to develop them for 26. I mean, they're going to be playing because they're trying to beat Tennessee, and they're trying to beat Auburn, and they're trying to beat Ole Miss. So clearly they can help. Are they difference makers right now? Probably not. The problem with defensive linemen is, though, that's the last position on earth where a guy can come in and be an immediate difference maker. We've actually seen it a time or two. We saw it with Tommy Harris. We saw it with Tommy Harris. We saw it with I'm trying to think back in the old days of OU football. I mean, Leroy Selman did not come in and make a difference as a true freshman. Gerald McCoy did not come in and make a big difference as a true freshman. Almost never happens. We saw it with Tommy Harris. Will we see it with David Stone or Jaden Jackson? Probably not. I mean, that's a tall ask. But coming in and helping and learning and being better than the older guys, probably so. So I think they will get better, and that's probably the key to this team is play them early. They'll be better in October than they were in September. They'll be better in November than they were in October. So that's probably the best case scenario.
Well, sort of like those young defensive linemen, what are they going to be in the fall? Question about Jackson Arnold, Barry. What's he going to be in the fall? We saw him have a pretty decent day in the spring game, but, obviously coming off a rough outing in the Alamo Bowl, unlike that night, didn't seem to have a ton of passes that were interception worthy, didn't really come close to that at any point in the game. Had those deep shots to Dion Burks, had some other close calls that didn't quite connect. But at this point, are we able to start projecting Jackson Arnold? Is he a future star? Is he a current star? What exactly is this guy? What's he going to become the fall for the Sooners?
Well, I think the answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
I also think the Sooners are learning what life used to be like and what it is for a lot of people. Since go back to 2013, Trevor Knight, redshirt freshman, quarterback, had an uneven year, had some good things, some rough things. Then had the oh what a night Sugar Bowl against Alabama, fabulous game, that kind of thing. But that's the way it's supposed to be, or the way it always was. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but since then, the Sooners have been. They've been going with veteran quarterbacks. I mean, Baker Mayfield as a third-year collegian in 15, and they had him for 2 more years. And then you have the transfers with Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. And then only in 2020, Spencer Rattler, redshirt freshman, was the only time they really had an unproven quarterback going. And Spencer had a good year. He's all Big 12. And I think that's probably the ideal. Is can Jackson Arnold be in 2024 what Spencer Rattler was in 2020? And, of course, in 21, we saw the crazy year of Rattler going and then being replaced by Caleb Williams, then Dylan Gabriel. But that's the model. Spencer Rattler, highly regarded, highly touted. OU quarterbacking was at the apex in 20 and 21. And so anybody Lincoln Riley ran out there, people thought were going to be great. Remember, Rattler in 21 was the Heisman favorite, that kind of stuff. Didn't pan out. But Jackson Arnold, he's not the Heisman favorite. The OU quarterbacking has slipped. It's not in the national spotlight right now. So I don't know that the expectations outside of Oklahoma are mighty for Jackson Arnold. Inside the state, of course, they're crazy. But I think he's going to be a good quarterback, just not a great quarterback in 2024.
Yeah, I would think in 2024 he's going to be a first-year starter, and he's going to do things that a first-year starter at quarterback does. He's going to have times that he struggles. He's going to have times that he's great. He's in a good rhythm. He, is doing things that give you a thought that, hey, he's turning a corner. He's going to be fantastic. And then he's going to have, they'll fall back. That's what happens when you've got young quarterbacks. So I think Oklahoma fans, I'm probably not going to convince them right now to, temper their expectations, but I think that you have to keep that in mind. First-year starters at quarterback are likely to have ups and downs and go to the SEC, and I think that's going to magnify the ups and downs. You're going to be going against some really good defenses, so there's going to be days that he's going to do great against those defenses. There's going to be days when he doesn't. So I think that's just going to be the situation. And, obviously he's got a new coordinator who's going to be, trying to navigate first year leading this offense, first year in the SEC defense. Zach Alley also taking over at coordinator. Did we learn anything about Seth Luttrell and Zach Alley as coordinators in the spring game, Barry? Did you come away feeling like you had a sense of what those guys are going to be about?
I actually didn't think it was that great of a scrimmage, that great of a spring game to figure out what's going on with the new coordinators. Zach Alley was limited. Not a lot of blitzes. Brent Venables didn't want to see a lot of blitzing. Try to give the offense a fighting chance, probably. So really not much there. The offense, I don't know. I didn't see much throw to the tight end. You don't know if that's because they're not going to throw to the tight end or they don't want the opposition to know they're going to throw to the tight end.
Yeah.
Of course, on the other hand, the first 3 games of the year are not a high caliber competition. So I don't know if they'll be throwing to the tight end or sharing state secrets even on games in early September. But that's really it was a pretty vanilla offense. I assume Seth's got a lot of things dialed up differently than what we saw Saturday. It was a pretty status quo type of scrimmage. No exotic formations, no 2-back sets, none of that stuff. So I didn't really learn a lot about the coordinators. Didn't get to talk to him either. Brent Venables still punishing us for various misdeeds, I suppose, by not letting us talk to the coordinators, which means OU fans don't get to hear from them. So I don't know. I don't know if he realizes who he's really punishing. But good thing I've known Seth for 25 years. And unfortunately, I wouldn't know Zach Alley if he walked up and knocked on my door. So, it's a little bit of a different dynamic there. We're going to have to learn more about those guys come September. Didn't learn much in April.
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned the tight end throw game, which has been absent for a while. I'm a big fan of getting the ball in the hands of the tight end. It happens a ton in the SEC. You've got a former fullback coordinating the offense, and his sidekick is a former tight end, and Joe John Finley. You got to think if the Sooners are going to throw to the tight end, these are the 2 guys to get it done. So I'm holding out hope for you, Seth Luttrell. Let's go. When it comes to other things we may not know till the fall, Barry, kickers. We saw Zach Schmidt. We saw Florida State transfer Tyler Keltner. More freshman Liam Evans. Not a ton of live kicking in the game. They were good on PATs. 1 make, 1 miss on field goals. Long field goal was missed, 44 yards. That's been the bugaboo for Sooner kickers. So any chance that you feel any better about the Sooner kicking game at this point?
No, not really. Keltner missed from 44. You said 44, and Schmidt made one from shorter. I don't know. I want to see him in the games. That's where it really matters. I think Brent Venables and every other coach feels the same way. It's just not been a Sooner strength. The entire kicking game, not just the field goal unit or the kicker, the entire kicking unit has not been high caliber. To me, that's hidden success. If you can figure out a way to win more in the kicking game, we saw this in the early Bob Stoops years. They were really good in the special teams. That gradually subsided. But we've seen
return to punt occasionally and stuff like that.
There you go. A fake every once in a while. But, we've seen people like Kansas State and Virginia Tech and people like that really make hay out of the special teams. And when there's a talent gap, say on the lines, that's a way you can get some of that real estate back. And Sooners have never had to worry about that. They dominate real estate. Will they dominate real estate in the SEC, particularly this year when the lines are a little thin? Probably not. Got a new special teams coordinator, Doug Deacon, coming in from San Diego State. I've actually met him, a super guy. I'm encouraged by what I see there, but that's a culture that needs changing over time. I don't know that there's a quick fix there, but it starts with a guy that can kick the ball between the uprights, because in the SEC, when it's when you need 3 points, you need 3 points, and in the Big 12, maybe a little bit more of wide open football, and 4th and 3 from the 34, you go for it. But 4th and 3 in the SEC, you might need to try to get the 51-yard field goal. So a good kicker coming through. Zach Schmidt up and down last year. Keltner coming in from Florida State. You figure Florida State's got a very good reputation as going back forever, unless they're playing Miami, making field goals. So, we'll see. And Leon Evans, the freshman from Moore. So that's a competition that will go into the fall and will probably be determined in games, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here, let's finish on some positives, because the kicker's definitely not sort of a positive note. But tailbacks and then the guys behind the defensive line of scrimmage. Let's talk about those two areas. Tailbacks, I mentioned earlier, we didn't get to see a ton of Gavin Sawchuk, and still it was a pretty darn good day for tailbacks. Seems like they've got they're in a good spot at tailback, Barry. And it was just last season that it felt like they couldn't figure out what to do at tailback, using a variety of guys, not getting much production in the early half of the season. Then Sawchuk comes around, looks great. Javonte Barnes is hurt. We didn't really see much of him, but it seems like now they've got those guys potentially going to be, pretty good moving forward, and then some other guys. So this feels like a tailback group that is really pretty solid right now.
Yeah, Sawchuk showed that he's very good, and they're in good hands there. Javonte Barnes showed it the year before, didn't play much last season. Did not play in the spring game, but we heard good things. So I don't know exactly why Barnes didn't play. The redshirt freshman Caleb Hicks, pretty good player, looked like. Sam Franklin, your guy, you talked about him last week. Tennessee Martin transfer. He showed some things, but it's pretty clear to me that it's Gavin Sawchuk's job.
Right.
And potentially Javonte Barnes will be back there as his number 2. That's what it looks like to me. With Hicks and Franklin at least being, on the fringes of contending for playing time. But I think Sawchuk's a really good player, and I don't know, he's not Billy Sims, but I think he's a guy they can count on, a guy that can make plays. I'm not worried about tailback. Let's put it that way. That's not a position I'm worried about at Oklahoma, not this year.
Well, and if it ends up being Sawchuk and Barnes, that's essentially the 1-2 punch that people were expecting a year ago and were excited about a year ago. Right. So if those two guys are your two, that you use most out of the backfield, I don't know why that would be a disappointment. Coming out of that bowl game against Florida State, everybody was really fired up about those two guys, specifically Sawchuk. Now maybe it's happening a year after people thought those would be the guys, but I don't know why you'd be disappointed with that. Those two guys, when they've been good, they've been very good. And then if you can get, some good carries out of those other guys, I think that's an exciting proposition. I'm with you. I don't feel like running back is a position that, is in the list of concerns, definitely not high. Also on the list of concerns that are, way down the list, defensive backs, Barry. Seems like the Sooners are in great shape there. I said, we're going to talk about the guys off the defensive line. Linebacker group is maybe a little bit more up in the air. Obviously, Stutzman leads that group, really good. But it really feels like defensive backs, we didn't even see Billy Bowman and Woody Washington on the field, and yet still in the spring game saw some pretty good returns from that defensive back group. That seems like a real positive right now for the Sooners.
I think they got a lot of guys that can play back there. Gentry Williams is hurt, but Connie Walker played, did some good things, got beat deep a time or two, but that happens. But Robert Spears-Jennings made some plays at safety. Peyton Bowen is going to be there. Billy Bowman. I like the defensive backfield. I think they're going to be deep and solid. That's not a concern. The linebackers, they got Stutzman's a star, and then they got a lot of guys that have played, and that always helps when you're talking about Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Jaron Kanek. They got some guys. Lewis Carter looked pretty good as a young guy. So I think they're going to be fine at linebacker, maybe not star power below Stutzman. But, really when you get right down to it, Jacko, this OU football team comes down to the lines on both sides. And, and unfortunately, this is the year they're going to the SEC. You want the lines fortified. They're not going to be fortified when they go to the SEC. Brent Venables is just going to have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And, that means that those defensive backs, those linebackers are going to have to make plays. They're going to be faced with situations where, they're going to have to chase a wide receiver around maybe a little bit longer than they would like, or going to have to make up for, running backs getting free into the defensive backfield. They're going to have to make some plays. And I think that sort of is the same on the other side. You're going to have to see, maybe running backs get a couple extra yards where the offensive line maybe isn't helping them get those yards, or receivers are going to have to help Jackson Arnold when he's scrambling around because, they just don't have as much time as they have previously with Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line. So I do think they've got skill position wise, it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have everybody you want, but you got to feel good about what they've got around the lines. And you said it earlier, Barry, the progress and the development and the evolution of the lines is going to be critical. They're not where they need to be right now. How much further can they get this summer, this fall in two-a-days, in the fall camp, those early games before the SEC games start? That's going to be highly critical to see. Can they evolve enough to put up a line of defense, whether it's against defensive lines or getting to offenses? We'll see. That's definitely a big area that's going to have to develop. All right, that's it for spring football at OU, and that's it for us right now. That's all the time we've got, but we've got all sorts of OU football content at selloutcrowd.com. You can find that as well as all of our columns, videos, and podcasts there, as well as on our mobile app. Download that mobile app today. If you want our content sent straight to your email inbox, we've got you covered there too. Sign up for our newsletters. It's free and easy. Just head to selloutcrowd.com and opt in. If this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.